Welcome to Selling Circular, the podcast dedicated to exploring the innovative minds and business models shaping our transition to a circular economy. My name is Gar Punnett, CEO of LoopLayer.
I'm Sabir Lakhani, VP of Product at SpareTech.
It's those innovative minds that we're talking about today. It is the people that we aspire to be, that we surround ourselves with. Today, we're going to maybe make those people feel a little uncomfortable because some of those, we flirt with the type A personalities, the people that are doing all the great work that we're doing. But today, we're talking about burnout. And we're talking about burnout in the sustainability sector. And if you just felt your shoulders tense up a little bit, because we're talking about anxiety, we're talking about things that might mean like, oh, we're not doing enough. Well, yes, we are doing enough, and you may not be actually alone with how many people feel that way.
Yeah, and I think about like the purpose of this podcast, and we always want to talk about like the models and business models, but we do see it exploring the innovative minds, right? If we're not healthy and functional and able to deal with the avalanche of wildness happening in the sustainability sector, but also in the world right now, then we are not able to execute on the things that we want. So
there are all sorts of, I think, anecdotes we will relate to in the episode about our bodily maintenance. But that's the reality of it. And our guest gets right into that.
Our guest today is Laurie McGinley. She brings a perspective that challenges how we think about our careers, success, and sustaining ourselves for the long haul. And she's somebody who's actually burned out a couple of times. She'll talk about that. And now she helps others navigate these kinds of situations.
I mean, this is the number that really got us focused on this, which was 62% of sustainability professionals report signs of burnout. So if you're really putting that into perspective, the community that we're in, 2/3 of these people, the ones that we like to talk to every day, think about these problems, try to go solve things, are struggling also maybe to save themselves from that drowning in that burnout feeling. And these are all wonderful people and ones that we need to all be working together to solve these bigger problems, but also be looking out for one another to try to navigate those exact ingredients that might lead to that exhaustion.
Yeah, and with one of the things that stuck out to us in this conversation with Laurie is she encouraged us not to think about career paths as linear. She, like her grandfather, for example, is just somebody who worked at the same bottle cap factory for his entire life, like a linear career path. But, she encourages us to think about our careers as a circular system, like compost styles. And,
Yes.
she's even referring to ourselves, our capacity, our careers as, waste is only waste when and if you waste it.
So as we explore what happens when your body won't let you fly as close to the sun as you thought you could, and you can't seem to be taking those breaks, and you have that thought track that just won't let you get as much done, but you're worried about sort of all the pressures of everything that's going on. Well, that may not be actually the most efficient way to change the world. And so how cultivating what Laurie calls that gravitas, that can really help you understand what you're going through in that moment, go within, balance out all the things that are happening mentally. Well, that's what can transform you in those high-stake environments to actually make those high-stake moments actually mean something and get to those situations where a solution might actually be possible.
So if you're a founder, grinding, a sustainability leader, feeling the weight of the world, or just curious about how you can sustain your work in the world, this conversation might change how you think about rest, resilience, and your own relationship with the work that you do.
Yeah, I needed this one. So I know we're excited to share it with you. Enjoy.
The entire economy that you're covering, the circular economy, is full of people who are really smart, really ambitious, and working on something that is far bigger than they are. And those are the ingredients that lead to burnout.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. And to that end, I'm going to keep that in as the intro. So that will lead us right into the conversation, because we are dealing with highly capable, passionate individuals.
Yes.
That can lead to lots of emotional bandwidth scope. I don't know how to, we're dealing with highs and lows here, and I've somehow perfected myself a little. I shouldn't say that. I'm always a work in progress, but I try to keep it as steady as possible, and just no matter the good, no matter the bad, right in there. But as I say that, I am prone to errors in that thinking. And so what I am curious about is what about this work and sort of promotes burnout. There was a great
Yeah.
statistic. It said about 62% of sustainability professionals can burn out. Oof, that is hard to hear, as this is really good work and can be very draining at the same time.
So that StatGar was from a study that was done last September, so September of 2024. It was small. It had an N of 159. And the people who they were interviewed ranged from very small organizations to multinational corporations. They were all people who are working in sustainability. 62% of those 159 people who, as previously stated, are highly capable, highly intelligent, highly ambitious, highly motivated, and are all working on something bigger than they are, reported signs of burnout. And when I read that study, when I look at that, I think, wow, but a lot of the people I talk to don't like talking about it. Is that number higher?
Yeah.
And
'cause I
also,
can say
just to
even-
drive 62% home, just for those of you playing at home, it's a titch more than 3 out of 5. It's almost 2 out of 3. So there's 3 of us in here.
Well, that might be me. But and the only reason I say that is because it's so funny how, as we're talking about this, and this is my own, so to deal with my own problems in this, maybe small p there, I can feel the anxiety as we're talking about burnout, as we're talking about the work ahead. I can just feel it bubbling up, and I'm live processing as you're talking, so it's real.
Yeah, it's real. And I, just to be clear, I've burned out twice. And what I know to be true, I didn't know at the time because I couldn't find anybody to talk about it. That's not a fair statement. I wasn't willing to talk about it. Therefore, didn't find anyone to talk about it. I didn't know this at the time. I thought time would heal. And while time definitely makes the symptoms diminish, it doesn't heal them. And what I know now, and I can actually feel, I'm doing this because I can feel it in my body, is that before I healed the burnouts, my body wouldn't let me fly as close to the sun as I had flown before. I could not achieve at the level that I had been achieving. My body wouldn't let me. And this weekend, I got the gift of an incredible visual for this that I want to share with you. My youngest daughter, who is 8, got a really bad burn across her finger. So it goes across the joint, up into the pad of her finger, and then down here. It was a hot glue burn. And it's healing. It's tender, but the skin is all healed up, and it's okay. She can write at school. But
A
we
growth
were in the
moment
wood.
for any child.
Yeah. This is like, we're going to treat the hot glue with a little more respect moment, but also like an awful burn. So we were in the shop over the weekend. I'm looking for the right tool. I think I'm going to pretend like my spoon is a tool, and I'm going to pretend like my mouse is the piece of wood that she was working on. So she's right hand dominant. It's her right index finger. She's working on a little piece. She's got a tool and she's shaping it like this. Her body wouldn't let her finger touch the tool. I highly doubt she was aware that her finger was floating above it. And she can write with a pencil. She can put pressure on it. It's okay. But her body wouldn't let her do that, which would have been the way to use the tool that would have been more effective and more comfortable, maybe, and more known. It's such a clear visual of what happens when you burn out, that you're doing something world-changing and audacious, and you're doing it out of love because it's bigger than you are and it's for all of us, and you're able to almost like gobble up all of the things and do them for years maybe. But then when your body says, hey there, Bob, you've been pushing it too hard. We're just gonna... Your body shuts you down. And at that point, when your body comes back off of it, and you feel the feels of burnout. By the way, does anybody ever talk to you about what burnout feels like? Can we talk about that for a second? It feels different depending on what your motivation is. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So sometimes it just feels like no one can keep up with you. Sometimes it feels like there's never enough time. Sometimes literally it just feels like a lot of lack of sleep. Like sleeping is impossible. Sometimes it feels like racing thoughts. Sometimes it feels like squirrel brain. Sometimes it just feels like all I can do is withdraw. The world is too much, and there's more.
And
But when you...
and that can happen at once or in different times.
Oh, you
or
can have
yes,
multiples
yeah,
of these. Yes, this
yeah.
can be blended. This is a mix and match situation.
Mhm.
And there's more than what I just rattled off. So when your body says, well, hey there, bub, come on back here, and you get that rest, now it doesn't let you go back until it feels safe. I'm sure eventually my daughter's finger will make contact with the tool again once it feels safe. I don't know how long that will take, however long it takes.
One thing I think that's interesting about what you're talking about is the different motivations and it feeling different in your body. Because burnout doesn't just happen to climate and
No,
sustainability people, right? It happens actually to capitalist people too, right? And they're
all
like,
over the place. Yes.
this is what's interesting, I think, about the motivation piece is like, or maybe the irony of burnout, right? Is like you could be chasing unlimited personal financial growth and like being super self-serving for your family or whatever it could be,
For whatever.
like
Yeah.
it could be totally about the self, like that could be extreme, could be doing it for like better for your family or for your community, but still chasing like a financial outcome,
Mhm.
career ambition, ego outcome.
Mhm.
And I would say like climate is also like a version of those, like a blend of those, right? Like we feel maybe magnanimous or like we're doing it for the world or for the future generations, but also maybe like for the self and feeling ego and proud of the self that we are pursuing something that is not capitalist, right? Is like the anti-capitalist. And so I mean, we want to achieve and we want to feel like we're saving and advancing and also fighting the man and the capitalist at the same time, right? And so I think it's very interesting actually what ties us together as these like almost like opposing groups and can lead to the same outcome, which is burnout. And so I'm curious if you've like thought about that, come across that, and because it feels the same in our body, like we share this weird commonality.
Yeah, Sabir, this is really, really insightful. And what I will say is, yes, of course, obviously there's burnout across many different industries. I mean, think the other really high burnout rate industries are things like the armed forces, the military, the skilled trades, healthcare workers, first responders. Aren't these a whole bunch of people who are really smart and ambitious and capable working on things that are far bigger than they are? And when you talk about this could happen in a self-serving, monetary, capitalistic kind of a way, but it could also help in a seemingly selfless, community-minded kind of a way. There is actually a crossover in climate. Because what happens in a climate startup? You get a couple buddies. You start it because you care. One of you is an inventor genius. The other one is good at talking to people. Somebody's good at magnetizing, right? So you get it together, but you get to this point where now you're Series B and you've got a board that looks like a corporate board and you live in a capitalist society and you have to win or you will die. And so you take this, what maybe started as a heart forward for the planet kind of a thing, but then you end up weaving the textile into a capitalist society. And for the wild heart activist people who can keep it together and make it to Series B, they have real soul searching that happens there. And in a capitalist society, we need the climate ideas to get to that level. We do.
There's not to equate the traumas, and I can't speak to then some of those career paths that then have that higher burnout. But there is sort of, I would love for you to talk about the trauma aspect of of working in climate then, because there is some parallels to working in those, though I'm not equating, but there's an intensity and there's an existentialness that you're trying to fight against that can almost then, be pre-traumatic, as I think you've written about. What does that mean to you, and how should the audience think about that?
So I first of all want to be really, really careful with the word trauma. I am not a mental health professional or a medical professional. I don't pretend to be. And as a human, I've experienced trauma, right? So if you think, and I'm going to try to say this as generic as possible so you don't know which one of the categories that we're talking about that I've just talked about. Imagine this. You've gone through all the training. You've gone through all the experience. You've been selected as one who can do it. Not everybody made it who you got trained with. You're there. You're in the moment. The thing needs to be done. You're the one who is there to do it, and you're exhausted. What do? You mind your own wellness, and you do it. Because you went through this with people who didn't make it this far. You know you have something that should be there, and it's for something bigger than you are. You stay awake. You dig deeper. You think longer. You read one more study paper. You enroll 50 more people to help you. You do what needs to be done. And you mind your own wellness. I'm not talking about, during one 8-hour shift. If given that choice, if you've made it farther than your peers did, and you got the resources that you needed, and you're in the situation where the change is going to happen, you're going to choose to mind your own wellness every single time until your body turns it off. Do you have any idea which of those industries I was talking about?
You did a great job of
It's kind of similar, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, what does that say about then how we're designing teams and solutions and thinking about our collaborative nature and how to be open and transparent with expectations and delivery schedules? I mean, all of that seems to go in with then those events of mining or in mining that wellness is your point.
Well, Gar, you and I got into this conversation earlier this summer outside of an event, and I've been thinking a lot about it since we did, about how careers can be circular. And if we're talking about the physical circular economy, a lot of the times we talk about a linear product, right? It's got a birth and it's got a death, cradle to grave. But really what the circular economy is saying, no, it goes back in. Waste is only waste when you waste it, right? Well, what if we applied that to careers? Most of us, because of how we were raised and the environments we were raised in, the schools that we went to, we were taught that careers are linear. Right? Tell me I'm wrong. I have a grandfather who worked at the same factory his entire adult life making bottle caps. That's 2 generations from me. This was just like the norm. This is what you did. And he only didn't work at that factory when he was serving in World War II. Then he went back to it. So in that sense that we have been saturated in a cultural norm that careers are linear, what if we understood that careers were more like compost cycles? That maybe you get to a point where something's not quite working and you go back and get more nutrients. What if we looked at teams, to your question, what if we looked at teams as waste is only waste when you waste it? What if we looked at digging deep, which is what I was just describing a second ago? Everybody knows how to dig deep, right? What if we looked at digging deep as a circular system instead of it as an extractive mining technology? What would we do different about our teams? What would we do different about our careers? How would we manage growth of a company differently? How would we address the individual differently? How would we support the individual? What would we be talking? I have so many questions. I'm going to stop right now because we'll never answer them.
Well, I feel like this is going to be a terrible podcast because you're just thought-provoking. You're just making me go on my own journey of being like, I can't be as responsive as like, this is hitting.
God, we've had several conversations. You should have known this is where this would go. This is who I am.
Exactly. And I so appreciate that. Severa, I mean, part of what I loved about my conversation actually earlier this summer with Laurie was that one of the first things you opened with is you were like, just a warning, people do tend to sort of open up around me in these conversations. Like, no, totally. Then this is going to be a great pod. So yeah, I think in that what really hit me is how then this is on leaders to evolve, to understand how they can not only be ready for themselves in not mining all of their resources, not mining all of their wellness, and being more open and conscious with their team. But when it comes to hiring, and I think this is such a flashpoint, I think right now with hiring, where as leaders, you're trying to check boxes. You're trying to get the right candidate, but you need to understand a person in their totality a little bit more. And I think that's where this circular nature comes in. Is so what if someone doesn't have a particular title? So what if they don't have this particular experience? Can you look at their capabilities? And I think that's something that we need to evolve more into, so that we're not looking at hiring as risk mitigation. We're looking at it as like growth opportunity for the team and for the individual.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful. And when you say this is on leaders to do, I can't quite disagree with you. But
Okay.
I'm also acutely aware how this can sprout up organically like mycelium. And that this really can come from the body of employees. And the reason
Yeah.
I can't disagree with you that it's on leaders is leaders set the tone and leaders
Power
allocate to
dynamics.
whatever happens, right? And if the leaders aren't on board, it's going to have to be a coup, which maybe is not productive, but it can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
And what I'm acutely aware of because of where I sit and who I have the opportunity to talk to is that we all have this within us to shift from a linear extractive career model to a compost cycle, a nutrient-rich model. We all have it within us, and I want to be really clear about what I'm talking about with this. Every single one of us at some point in our life has encountered a challenge and figured out how to become a different person to overcome it. I know if I just give you YouTube a second to pause and anybody listening a second to pause, I'm sure you can come up with an example of when you've done this, where you wanted something really, really different in your life and you figured it out. And so the reason I think this is a little bit more like mycelium is it's already in there. It just might be dormant, or we might have bought into the top-down linear extractive model too much to feel like that it's safe for it to come out. But it's there.
Well, I'm curious, like from a trends perspective in your work, what you've seen, because when I think about, okay, we zoom out to the generations prior, right? Like your grandfather, I think about that job as like really fascinating, where you don't get to necessarily use your mind, but you
No.
have predictable, stable, almost like mellow, meditative question mark work. And
Yeah.
if you think about even zooming out even further, like when we did have better relationships with nature and we were working more with our hands and more in agrarian society, like maybe we were working physically our bodies harder, but more, again, maybe Zen. Yeah, hypothesis, right? It'd be really interesting to like be an anthropologist in all generations and compare. But like our work today is so different. We have like the more capitalist motivations. We have the technology to force our bodies in positions and communication styles that have never been done before. So I wonder now, when you were talking, I was thinking, okay, so burnout might be new to us as society. Maybe not. It could be like different versions of that. It is like a new flavor of burnout. And are we able to be self-aware enough to actually take action holistically as a society to say, no, we don't want to work like that? And then what that would mean for the evolution of work.
That's the right question. That's the question I want to put energy into answering. And I hope to God the answer is yes. Now, where my brain goes is what would need to be different for as a society to say, the way that we have worked breaks us and we're done. What would it take? One of my clients
A real
works on
disruptive force.
one of my clients works on workforce development in the skilled trades. And I saw a TikTok this morning where she was talking about suicide rates in the trades. Very, very high burnout industry, very, very high suicide rate. Very physical job, essential job for society, right? What would it take, and if we can just slip into the like macro capitalist economic model, what would it take for enough leaders who make the money decisions to say, this is no longer acceptable? And I'm just going to even float this out there, not even because of like, we can't lose this many people to suicide. It's totally unnecessary and ridiculous and inhumane. But like, wow, the business model is breaking. What would it take for enough people to say the way that we have done business for generations is no longer viable for whatever reason, and we're going to do a radical overhaul? And I don't really have an answer, but I have a guess. I think what it would take is one, and if we're just talking about the skilled trades for a second, it would take one company to be wildly successful with the different model that puts humanity first, that puts your heart first instead of your billable hours, and is getting projects done faster and on time and with less injury and making more money. I think it would take one example for somebody to get up and, be flying on the hang glider above everybody else on the ground, feeling broke and being like, this is great! And we would see the model and we would see the shift.
I think what I love about that vision is I think we're at that nexus point right now. And I do this every podcast because it occupies so much part of my brain. I'll say the magic letters of AI because I think we're at this weird point where it can either be completely disruptive for, I don't want to say bad, but to non-human potential, non-human sort of generating and almost regenerating capabilities, or it has the potential to offer a model where we get to be more than us because we're not cranking out the old expectations of what we thought work is supposed to be. And I feel like we're in that moment.
I also think, to throw on top of that, is the parent of 2-generation alpha children.
Mm.
They ain't
Scary.
got time for great grandpa's model. They don't. I don't think they're into it. I don't think it's going to serve them. I see them growing up in a
broken for them.
way. It is broken for them. I see them growing up in a way. What's a good example of this? I'm a child of the 80s. Back to the Future, the first one, was like a very common movie. Everybody in my generation watched Back to the Future. And I was like, oh, I want to show this to the kids. This is like a good memory. When was the last time you guys watched that movie? Have you watched it recently? Because it had been a long time. I had lived in a different cultural paradigm.
Does it hold up?
I don't know. I think we were 9 minutes in. And my 12-year-old was like, this is racist. Turn it off. I am not watching this. And I was like, you're not wrong.
I had not watched it growing up, and my spouse loved it and tried to make me watch it, and I was like,
which scene did you make it to? Because
burn me.
he didn't
No,
even go.
I tried to make it through to be like, will it get better?
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. And so I think that just like little microcosm of a cultural example, she already at 12 is like, this is from the last century. I don't want it. At this point, you guys, she won't watch a movie from the last century.
Well, that is unfortunate. I think Jurassic Park could be good.
No, actually, if you watch them with an eye, they're all garbage. She's not wrong. And what I'm saying in this is I think that Gen Z, Gen Alpha, at some level, the millennials, like, we're done. And this old extractive model, I was in downtown Minneapolis last night, and I don't know where you live, but post-COVID, like downtown Minneapolis hasn't recovered post-COVID. And it was a beautiful 80 degrees September night, and the Lynx were playing, and the Lynx are awesome. And there was some other event happening, and several other events. There was probably theater going on, and there were actually people in downtown. It was really rare from the last 5 years to see this happening. And I think that the idea, what's that? At the Target Center, yeah. I think the idea is that great area, beautiful part of downtown. But I think the idea is that old model where I get up and I drive in traffic, and I sit my butt at a desk, and I support extractive things, and I support linear products, and I support single-use things, and I support extractive HR policies, and my career is linear, and my career is extractive, is dead. And so your question of what would it take, Sabir, it's the right question. It's not dissimilar from the question you all are asking everybody who comes on this podcast of how do we get the circular economy going? By the way, do you realize that the entire economy is circular already? What you're doing is you're accelerating the rate of circularity. Earth is circular. Earth is circular. And so
Yeah.
if we go from the foundational principle that we, for the love of ourselves and our families and our communities and our coworkers and the people we don't know who the work that we do impacts them, if we can say, we can do circular careers. They can be more like a compost cycle because waste isn't waste until you waste it. If we looked at that moment that I described earlier, where I've made it through all the training and I'm the one that was selected and I got the resources and I'm in the place to make the decision. And if we look at that instead of I got to mind my own wellness and dig deep and be here and do the thing, if we looked at it as, who do I invite in to make this right? I don't have to be the one operating the bottle cap stamping machine. By the way, I don't know if that's actually what he did, but he worked at a bottle cap factory. But I don't have to be the only one pulling the lever. What if I looked at it the way that mycelium looks at the nutrients in the forest floor? What do we need here to make this right? What would happen to that 62% reported burnout rate if we could do that?
I love the reminder that we as humans are the anomaly in the pattern of the long-term circular nature of Earth. And it's all we're doing is, to your point, trying to accelerate that and diminish our impact to extend our ability to be human and to be in the communities and to love and connect and to experience.
Yeah. And it really, and again, I'm actually, I don't know about you two, but I'm looking at this with a lot of hope because I understand the neuroscience of how this happens. I understand what it feels like bodily and mentally to get into a rut. I witness this in the people who work with me. When people hire me, generally, they feel like they're in a rut that's so deep that they can't see the sky anymore. And that life just kind of has to be like that. But neuroscience tells us that we can get to a moment like that and say, I don't want to live like this anymore. This doesn't support me. And we remain neuroplastic our whole lives. It's a myth that you can't teach an old dog a new trick. We remain neuroplastic our entire lives. And the process of unlearning what got you into that rut and learning who you need to be to have the life that you want is actually very simple. It's not rocket science to figure this out. It's just a matter of unlearning and relearning, and we all have everything we need to do that. And if we think about the collective of all of us, couldn't we approach the economy, the culture, the way that we treat our careers, the way that we hire people, the way leadership looks at talent, couldn't we approach that in the same way? We all have the ability to do this.
I'm curious in this moment, Sabira. You've gone from being sort of in front of the camera, and then as we started got more existential with it, you got nice and cozy. What's your reaction here? Is this a defense mechanism, or are you feeling the vibe of this here?
No,
What's going on emotionally?
Yeah. It's interesting as you were talking about, even the future generations. Where my head is going on, do we really we have it in us, but is the system the system makes us feel trapped, maybe? And or it creates that feeling of that rut, or seeing the sky feels harder maybe because of what we're taught, what we learn. And as you were talking about your kids also, just wondering, yes, they have an awareness, but also are they dealing with more than what we've dealt with? And how can we build that capability early on? It's okay, this is racist, I'm turning it off, but also I'm experiencing climate anxiety. How do I channel that? And so, I think I was going into an intergenerational,
So let's talk about that, Sabira. Because the reason I started Via Lucent is because my oldest kid, when she was 9, walked away from the television for the first time in her life. She's a very story-focused human. And it was the part in the nature documentary where David Attenborough talks about how much has changed in his lifetime. And she said, "This is too sad. It makes me too sad. I can't watch this." And it destroyed me. And that's when I shifted my career from what I had been doing managing construction to what I am doing now. And so you ask the question, how do we do this? Are they being exposed to more than we are? At some level, yes. They have more data from a more rapid news cycle than I did. I mean, I don't want to make judgments severe. You look younger than I do. You grew up with more data from a more rapid news cycle than I did. I think that the opportunity to be more in touch with what's happening as an existential planetary crisis, they have more access to that. But you ask, how do we do this? So this is I'm literally salivating right now. I have the answer. At an individual level, the way that I look at this is, if I as an individual want to change the world, there's a lot of external things that feel very impossible to move. But what I know all day long and twice on Sunday is that if I want to change how I perceive the world, that is 100% on me. I am the full author of that. And I actually talked to my kids about this. So one of them is a middle schooler, and she's starting to learn something in one of her electives. She's learning a lot more about current events. We don't have television in the house. Like, the kids didn't watch up listening to news on the radio or watching it on television, and they didn't have devices. Like, we've sheltered them, straight up. And so now she's getting exposed to this in the curriculum. And we talked about this like 2 nights ago. And what we were talking about is what happens within you when you experience the news, the new information. Let's just even call it new information, not the news. What happens within you when you experience the new information, that's your perception of it. And you have the ability, all of us has the ability to say, wow, I can feel my heart rate just, I get that vein in my temple has come back out again. And that happened while I was reading about that thing or watching that TikTok or whatever it was. We all have the ability to notice the automatic reaction that comes up with it and say, is that helpful? Does this make my life more successful? More loving? Does this support my career being more circular? Does this help me be a better parent or sister or kid or whatever? And we all have the ability to say, there might be a lot about the world that I can't change on my own, but I can absolutely be the author of how I show up for it. And if I can slip back into burnout just for a second, I tell people this, and none of you will believe me, and I just want to preface you. I know you won't believe me, but I solemnly swear to you this is true. If you're feeling burnout symptoms because you lead with love and you're working on something that's bigger than you are, the remedy is not a 3-month sabbatical. It's not even a long weekend. The remedy is not a lavish vacation. The remedy is noticing when you're showing up in a really elevated, neurochemically altered state of stress, noticing that, and cultivating a greater feeling of something that's more towards flow state. A more simple way to say that is the remedy to burnout is increasing the number of seconds per day that you feel a flow state. And flow state can feel like calm, it can feel like happy, it can feel like love, it can feel relaxed, it can feel like doing something that you lose track of time when you're doing it. And that's what I mean when I say we all have the ability to author our perception and how we show up with what's happening externally to us. And when you're in that rut and you can barely see the sky, most of the time what has happened is you have allowed yourself to automatically be programmed the way that humans want to be programmed. We evolved to notice scary things. Do you know what your ancestors were amazing at, and mine too? They were
Not
really,
dying.
really good at sniffing out danger, not dying, Garth. Thank you.
No.
Your ancestors and mine were elite extreme survivalists who honed our ability to perceive the tiniest sniff of danger and get away from it. And so we collect all of this data as a human. And then we have, where's my thing? We have a black mirror that collects more of it for us. But what I want you to know is you can notice that human evolved thing happening and saying, wow, this is not super helpful to me right now. I'm going to cultivate something that is more helpful.
To that end,
Mm.
I think what you helped me this week is I had a particularly stressful week. I've been dealing a lot with, again, AI. That's just my life these days. But cultivating gravitas. I believe I'm an Eisen in your book, in which running into the petri dish of burnout. There we go. Sabira, you'll get it soon. Yes.
I'll send you one, Sabira.
But yeah, exactly. And what I think I'm going to do here, though, is Sabira, I believe you're a Fiona.
Gar, be careful. We don't type other people. Be careful.
Oh, that's fair.
Sabira's got to figure it out on her own.
You'll figure it out. I'm sorry, but in this, I think what that meant was, and the only reason I did not type you,
Sure,
but for the category of just, there are particular, you have a term in here, but I'm not going to say it correctly, which is like sort of a not a stress relief, but it's basically an opportunity to practice, to feel grounded, to visualize. For me, that a lot of my work has already been on myself. Cultivating gravitas is a new way of putting it, I think. But for me, it's been really about generating, how do I feel safe? How do I feel heard in who I am, not to the world, but to what I'm trying to be, and cultivating a moment in which I can either relive that or project that internally and say, like, this is the moment I'm in. And it was very helpful this week. And it kind of placed me in a moment of thinking about water. Actually was my big one this week. I'm a swimmer, I'm a former swimmer, collegiate swimmer, and for me, as you might be a runner, there was something about that moment where I got to lose myself in those moments of and for me that was water. And so I think it was really helpful. And so I think I believe in that moment, and it speaks to those moments where you're trying to increase that frequency of which you feel that on a day-to-day basis in the work that you're doing.
Gar, that's a brilliant connection. Thank you for that. Also, I am an Eisen, as you may have noticed in reading the book.
Yes, I noticed.
When I say it's about spending more seconds per day in a flow state, for you, that might be getting in the water.
Mm-hmm.
My body doesn't
I don't do it enough.
Yeah, my body doesn't run the distances it used to be able to run, but I would connect with that feeling that you're talking about on anything longer than 4 or 5 miles. And then at that point, it would just be like hearing my heartbeat running out in the country, trying not to get chased by the farmer's dog. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When I talk about spending more seconds per day in flow state, and you're talking about gravitas, for a lot of people, you might say gravitas is executive presence. When you go into a high stakes situation, just like what I was describing, I'm the one who made it through the training and the thing is here and it's time to do it. That's a high stakes situation. And you've practiced feeling safe and feeling whole and feeling that you belong. When you get to that high stakes situation, if you can maintain that state of being while you are in it, no matter what anybody else is doing, I solemnly swear to you, you will get new results that you've never gotten before. And I want to be really, really clear on why this works. If you think about how you approach a high stakes situation right now, and it's different for everyone, it's different depending on what your motivation is. However you approach it now, some of that is autopilot. And what I mean by that is you think and say and feel things that you are not aware of. They're unconscious to you. Things come out of your mouth that you are unconscious of, and you behave in ways that you are unconscious of, and the way that you were listening even might be unconscious. Gravitas really is saying, I feel so whole and I feel so safe that I'm in the present moment and my perception is wide open. You will literally hear things you've been missing. You will see things you've never seen before. You will be able to have thoughts you have never had before. You'll be able to make a choice that you couldn't have made before because you're having thoughts that you've never made before. That choice will lead to you doing something different. Doing something different will change the outcome of the experience. You will feel different at the end of that experience. And neuroscience tells us is that feeling will feed more of those thoughts. It's a loop. And so when you can spend more seconds per day in a flow state, however you do it, you will be able to train yourself to go into those high states, high octane moments when it really matters, when the decision happens, when all the things happen. And if you show up and you can be well, and you're listening compassionately, and you have boundaries around yourself, and you're able to be creative with your thoughts and what you're saying and how you're hearing everything, that is literally where you get the new results that people are craving. When you're in a rut, you're not getting a variety of results, you're getting the same results over and over and over again. And that's it. It's cultivating that sense of gravitas that you can go into any situation and feel that way.
In your book, also, I mean, I obviously don't have it, but Gar has highlighted that you have a couple of exercises because it sounds like there's more seconds per day. That's like kind of like an aggregate takeaway. But when you're in those high stress, are the exercises that you describe, are they for those high stress situations or are they prep for them? And can you just talk about a little bit of
Yeah.
like practical
Most of them are prep for those high stakes situations. So the exercises that are in the book, and you can get these on my website too. I do a breath that helps you be more in your body. And the breath really is a prep ahead of time so that you can acclimate to it. Almost everybody who I take through that breath the first time, they're like super uncomfortable. Like, I don't like this. Or they're like trying to mask how uncomfortable it is. But if you can practice that ahead of time and be in that state in the high stakes thing, you will get new results. One of them is a shouting exercise. Don't shout in high stakes meetings. I mean, you will get different results, but maybe not desirable results. That's a prep for ahead of time. Cultivating gravitas is both. It's both a prep and how I want you to be in that moment. And then the fourth one is lover words. That's absolutely prep. That takes some time to cultivate. And lover words honestly reads into the gravitas exercise that you're talking about, Gar. And the accumulation of I picked these 4 things. This is part of the foundational program that I take people through because there are 4 things that really highlight what works differently depending on what your motivation is. So if you're an olive, a perfectionist, the balloon breath is a really, really good place to start. If you're Trip, the hero, the shouting exercise is an exceptional place to start. If you're Fiona, the researcher, the lover words are really important to get going early. And if you're an Eisen, the gravitas is important, first of all, because it appeals to your interest in winning. Eisens want to win. And it helps you right in that moment so that you can pay attention to the rest of the lessons. Eisens have a hard time slowing down. I'm one of them. I connect with that deeply.
Yes. I think what tracked with me in all of that this week, we'll speak personally again, is I found these, Sabira, we've talked about this before, I have this magical alley where I just keep picking up wonderful trash and bringing it into my home. And I found these pictures and I was like, what about these pictures am I identifying with? And it's the ocean. And it was like, it so hit me in that moment where there was this depiction of the ocean. It was like, oh, there it is. But it literally took me reading that section to be like, duh. So yes, that's why it was revelatory. So thank you. And that's really takes us to how really maybe to round this out. I've got a question. I know Sabira will have more, but I think my question does come to for the founders, for the leaders, for those in circular economy. If someone's listening, I mean, what message would you leave them with about sustaining themselves for the long term? And I struggle with the word fight because fight is so aggression based. But the long-term journey, whatever we have ahead to solve, how do we sustain ourselves, both individually and maybe from a community sense?
This is a great question, and I want you to know that if you're listening and you immediately don't connect with this answer, then I want you to try especially hard to connect with it. If I could give you all one thing, that you're in it, you are leading with love, you're working on something that's bigger than you are, you know you're the one. You know you have the answer that once it scales, it will save us all. Thank you, first of all. Second of all, you have to find a way to rest. And I know you don't want to hear that. And I know it feels counterintuitive. It might feel inefficient. It might feel wasteful. Waste is not waste until it's wasted. And I solemnly swear to you, you are bonfiring your best talent by being mediocre about taking breaks. Find a way to up your break game, even if it's 5 minutes at a time.
From someone who's working on that break game, it's so painful. It's
Yeah,
so
my
hard.
brain is not even exactly what you said, like, try to connect with it harder on
I know
Monday.
none of you can hear that. I know, but that's the honest answer. And I know that what feels hard about that is you're the one. Your peers didn't make it and you did. You're in the position to do it. But here's the thing. I had a stroke at work when I was 31. And this is in my book, Gar, you read it. I was a D1 athlete. I ran for the Gophers. At the time, I was a daily urban bike commuter and near vegetarian. The body was healthy, people. I had a
The
stroke at work.
system was working.
The system
machine
was there was
the
nothing
machine was
wrong with the
optimal.
machine. The machine was optimal. But what happened was I'm not even going to say mediocre. I had been D- about resting for so many years that my body in its full northern Minnesotan accent was, hey there, bub, guess what? You're taking a vacation in the ER. Grab your pinny because you're not biking home, bub. Put that on your lap. And your body will do that. I talked to a lot of you from the parking lot of your doctor's offices. It doesn't have to get that bad. I talked to a lot of you as your divorce is about to be finalized. It doesn't have to get that bad. I know that you love us all, and you're doing this because you love us, and you have to find a way to rest. And I mean this sincerely. Rest can happen in 2 minutes. You've got to figure out a way to be more comfortable with taking a break. It is the most efficient way to change the world is getting good at resting.
That's so interesting. I think, like, I really love how you frame, you do the work because you love everybody else. And we should then love ourselves enough to take the break to do that work, right? And if we just can't see the connection, then it almost dilutes the work. It dilutes the work.
And because I'm a provocative Eisen, and anybody who's familiar with the Enneagram, that's an Enneagram 8. I'm going to ask you, Sabira, if you were made a ranked list of things that you loved that you would fight for, how many items would you have on the list before you wrote your own name?
Oh, God. Too many.
Most of us would answer the same thing, myself included.
Yeah.
But the reality is a lot of people working in building things, they have big 6-7 figure machines, right, that they've invested in. Big important machines that do important processes. What if you treated your body like the 7-figure machine? Would you leave it running all night with barely any fuel? Would you never turn it off? Would you never do regularly scheduled maintenance? Would you never replace parts that were failing? No, you would never. You would never. Gar, find a way to get in the water.
Oh, yeah, you're exactly right. And something hit me, I think that will hit someone. To your point on who is going to listen to this and hear this in themselves, it's the person who goes, I should actually have regularly scheduled maintenance for my machine. That's going to hit. That somehow hit deeper than anything there. Was like, I do need to optimize my machine. Yes, no, exactly.
Yeah, and the regularly scheduled maintenance I do on my machine is a daily meditation. I haven't missed it in over 2 years. Can't imagine missing it. Would you run that machine without grease in the joints? No, you would not. No. Nobody would do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you. This was lovely.
I love the speed of this podcast because, again, this is the one that we get to put into a season where people get to breathe, look inward, not think about what they're not doing, and think about what they can do for themselves. And so thank you for being here and sharing that with us today.
It was lovely sharing this time with both of you. Thank you.